Hello, hello. How is everyone today? Good. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to KeyBank for continuing to sponsor our free programs and bringing free programs to all of you. I have a little bit longer list of things to kind of let you know about coming up. Next Wednesday, we have a special lunch lecture that's only on Zoom, but you're welcome to come here and watch it on Zoom. That Jeremy Johnson, who is one of the tribal members from the Delaware Tribe of Indians, will be speaking, and the title of his program is Cultural Continuity and Connection. Because moving forward, we are working with the tribe to eventually create an exhibit here, as well as programming and different things like that, as well as trips back and forth to have a cultural exchange. Then in April, we'll have Alice Wolfgang back, that she is doing a program called A Woman's Work Is Never Done, but it's based off of two diaries that we have in our collection. We also have our big exhibit for USA 250 opening April 18th and 19th. So if you want more details, either check out our website or feel free to ask us about it afterward. And then last but not least, our Penn Dry Goods is back this year, May 16th and 17th. So we hope to see you there. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. And can we all give Bob a nice round of applause and welcome?
Thank you. What a nice turnout. Thank you all for coming and showing up. Although I may be in some trouble looking around here, I see people that have forgotten more about log structure since breakfast than I ever knew. So I'm going to have a lot of help if I have questions. And thank you, Meredith and Beth, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to speak here and to hold forth here at Schweinfeld. So slide number 1. This is a Fagley photo. Winslow Fagley did a lot of photography around here early part of the 20th century, and his photos are housed here at Schweinfelder, and this is a Fagley photo. That's Mrs. Jacob Sauter.
Can I just move
Sure.
this for you so it's not in the way? I apologize. There you go.
Very good. And her house near Lidditz, I think. And I love this. I love this house because I have a pointer here. Now I think the Zoomers aren't going to be able to see the pointer, but there we are. Side lap shingles, I think, if you know what those are. They are tapered left and right, and also top to bottom. And there's Mrs. Jacob Sauter smoking her pipe. And V-notch corner joinery here. And I love this picket fence. No two pickets alike. Every one is different. So here we are. And Meredith, help. It's not advancing.
It just likes to be difficult. Come on. There you go.
Okay. Okay, a little text. The knowledge of how to build with log construction came from specific mountainous regions of Europe. Most of the Pennsylvania Dutchmen around here came from areas that did not use log construction. There was log timber framing and half timber, but log houses basically did not exist in the areas there in the Palatinate where most of the immigrants from around here came. Specific areas in Europe served as the source areas of Midland culture, which we are, that Midland Atlantic culture, log construction. The sources include Northern Europe, Scandinavia. In fact, it was probably the Scandinavians, the Swedes, that brought log structures here originally. Of course, the Delaware Valley was settled by the Dutch and then the Swedes and then eventually the Germans. The Czech, Polish, Eastern German borderland, and I think I have one house here that follows that sort of pattern, second most influential, and the portions of the Alps, southwestern Germany region, least influential. Log structure construction was an essential cultural element of the larger Midland culture. Matter of fact, knowledgeable people have said that if you were to come here in colonial times you would have found that, and particularly in the country and a lot of farms around here and in the towns, as much as 90% of the structures were log, farm structures and so on. And it seems terrible. It seems impossible now when you look around. See all these old stone houses and old brick houses. And earlier, many of those are the second generation houses on the same site. The actual original house was probably a small log house, which has long since passed away. Anyway, said to be the oldest building in Pennsylvania, the Lower Swedish Log Cabin in Delaware County. I think it's the Delaware County Park. 1640s said to have been built. Germans largely adopted this method of corner joinery. And I'll talk more about that when we get some more clearer pictures. But there also is a good example of that corner joinery that I'm going to be talking about. These are corner fireplace houses. The large central fireplace with a firewall going up through the middle of the house, 2 or 3 stories in early Pennsylvania German houses that are stone. Those were later sometimes, but small houses had corner fireplaces. And this is one. There's a very small log house near my house where I live in New Hanover, and that had a corner fireplace. My thinking is small early houses, corner fireplace, larger firewall Germanic houses with the three rooms on the ground floor. Those are larger. Okay, Bucks County, built 1747 by Christian Shelley, home of Dean Moore. That is a spectacular log house because for the date is huge. Are we sure the date, Dean?
The bottom portion was the original, and what you see now was this way in 1798.
So 18th century nonetheless.
Yes.
47 or 90, 18th century. That's near Spinnerstown, Bucks County. Beautiful log house. What dates it pretty early is that tapered dovetail corner joinery. That's not real common. The most common are the V-notch, the saddle V-notch, I call it. We'll get to that when we get to it. I'm not sure that this is that particular house, but I have the slide in here, so I might as well talk about it here while it's up. On many early log structures, well, many early 18th century structures, you'll find in the cellar, underneath the first floorboards, the beams, the joists have a notch, or rather a channel hacked in them, often several inches deep. It's crude, it's just hacked in. And of course, in there, inserted in there, from one joist to the other, was a board, and on top of that board, there was clay and stone packed in to make an insulating layer between the cellar and the first floor. It's called paling. I'm safe to say most 18th century, large 18th century houses had that paling. You never say never, and you never say always, and you never say all, but mostly they had that paling, that insulating layer between the cold, damp cellar and the first floor. And in some places that still exists. Usually the boards rot away, the whole thing comes down, and people just clear it out. This is the Moore house there that we just talked about. Those dovetail joinery is not common. That's an indication too that it's pretty old. Everybody wants their house to be older than it actually is. People have a house and say, "Oh, this is 1768," and say, "Oh, how do you know? Oh, we have the deed, 1768 deed. Now you have a 1768 piece of property deed, but probably the house is the second or third generation house on the same site. The first one was probably log. They last 50, 60, 70 years at best. By that time, they're taken away. The family is usually more prosperous and they'll put up a stone house. Rarely do they put up a second log house. Could happen. There's never say never. But usually they're more prosperous, and that's when the stone house goes in. And people have the house now, and they'll say, you know, well, the 17 the house, but it's usually not so. But it doesn't matter. Well, somebody asked me to look at their house and date their house, and I dated it to around 1800. He said, no, I'll just make up a date, 1747. And how do you know it's 1740? Oh, we have the deed. And I explained to them that this type of house would not have been, positively not have been built in 1747 or whatever. And they insisted. So finally, you know, make it 1647 for all I care. But that's not the style of house that was built here. So anyway, people always want their house to be older than it is, usually. So there's more on that house. Many times, on I think this is the gable wall. Many times on a gable wall, there'll be 3 logs that run from one end to the other to tie the whole thing together. Because all of these logs, of course, are split at the windows, and the other split at the doors or split at the windows, so they don't have a stabilizing lateral effect. So to stabilize it laterally, there's almost invariably 3 large logs that run from one side of the house to the other, and right above the windows, right above the first floor windows. This is the most common type of corner joinery around here. It goes by various names. I like to call it notch and saddle. But what you find is that, let's see if I can point this out. There will be, at any log, a point at the top like that, it's cut like that, and right angles to it, right underneath it, there will be a notch cut in. There'll be here's the point. Here's the point. And this log has a notch cut in to accept the point of the log below it. And going up in that manner. This is the most common type of corner joinery. Anyone can make it. All you need is a crosscut. You need a woodland. You need a crosscut saw and a hewing axe. And although this was probably awfully nice corners to be made with a hewing axe. Now I understand that at one time there'd be a crew that would go around and put these buildings and these houses up. There were corner men, and they were made with a good sharp axe, and they were built one at each corner. There was a ramp with a rope where the logs were rolled up, and the corner man would cut the point of the notch and the V to accept that from the other log going in the other direction, and that was built on site. That it wasn't cut out on the ground and then taken up, but they were actually built on site by the corner men. So that's the story that I have on that. But that type of joinery at the corner is the most common kind of joinery, I think, in my view. There's the Golden Plough Tavern. Yeah, that's kind of a tourist attraction. There's some interesting things here to look at. Don't look too much at the roof. That was made, I think I know who made that roof. The wrong wood, cut the wrong way, put on the wrong way. And they all curl up. You cannot take a thin white oak board and slice shingles out of it. They will curl 100%, because the shingle must be riven and not sawn. That is, riven, you take a length of a log and you split the shingles vertically out of the length of log, so that the grain all goes horizontally. You're not getting any bendy grain in there. Shingles have to be riven and split and not sawed. And if you saw them, they'll curl up every time. The preferred, plus this was white oak. The preferred wood for driving shingles, for making shingles, is red oak. It's very durable. It splits nicely, and it's what they used. While on the topic of woods, before I forget, the Dutchmen around here almost universally used white oak as their building, white oak logs and white oak as their framing material. And it is the heaviest and the densest and the hardest to work. But that's what they use, probably because it was heavy, dense, and hard to work. One would think that they would use more chestnut because it's almost as durable as white oak. It's lighter, easier to fashion, easier to work. But there was some chestnut, but they like that white oak. White oak you can work like making mortises and tenons and drilling out things. When it's green and fresh, it's not too bad. But when it gets dry, it's hard like old bones. And you can't, you don't want to mess with old dried up white oak. And it almost always white oak. They never knew them to use pin oak, probably because of all the knots and pins, or red oak, which they probably used for other things. White oak was a preferred building material. Now this is half timbered corner post side lap shingles with a roof kick. That is, the water would come theoretically come down the roof, and then the bottom there was a little like a ski slope would technically shoot the water out. I don't know how that worked, but they moved the water out a little way from the side of the building. The timber framing, as you can see, is there, and then there's infill between the parts of the timber. Here they use brick. Let me just break off for a while on bricks. Brick structures, if you see brick structures, brick houses, they're probably built around 1800 or before or after about 1740 or 50. Between 1800 and basically 1840 or 50, there was very little brick building around here because there was no wood to fire the kilns. Up until 1800, well, Philadelphia is a city of brick. All the old Philadelphia buildings were all brick. There was plenty of good brick clay, and there was plenty of wood to fire the brick kilns. It takes a lot of heat to fire a brick, and you have to make that up to a 21 or 2200 degrees, which is hot. I mean, it's almost to the point of melting iron, and you have to leave it soak for a matter of hours to get good, hard, red stretcher bricks that go in the outer skin of the building. Those were the most expensive. The softer salmon brick are in areas in the kiln that didn't get so hot. They're sort of bisked, but they're not really hard. And they try to use the red stretchers on the outer skin of the building. Sometimes they get a salmon brick mixed in there, and obviously it starts to deteriorate in the weather. But anyway, there's a good bit of brick structures around here up till around 1800. Now, of course, you never say never, and you never say always. There could have been some nice brick structures made 1820, 1830, something, but generally not. And the difference is around 1840 or 50, the railroads came along. And you could get coal down here from the coal regions by rail. Otherwise, the only way to get coal down here was by barge, like a canal boat and the Schuylkill navigation. And it was slow and it's expensive. Railroads brought inexpensive coal for stoves and for kilns, like brick kilns. So there was a real boom. There was a building boom, like in brick barns and so on, around 1840 and 50 and after. And I think it's because that was when the bricks became widely available. So the weight of the structure of the bricks of the log structure is carried by the corners. I didn't note where I got this slide from, but you can see the notch and saddle. There's a nice picture there, very shallow notch and saddle joinery. People have said that you can kind of date log buildings by the sharpness of the point. If there's a real high point that goes up far, sharp high point, that's older. And the more modern you get, the point comes down and down and down and down and down, probably because it's easier. And as time passed, the easy way is the way that's used. But so that's a good picture there of corner joinery, the notch and saddle corner joinery. Most structures around here use that type of joinery at the corner. That's just something offline. The typical house, the joinery of the house before the chinking is put on. That's the Leidy house, about 1750, Gilbertsville. Another good example of that, the V-notch joinery for the corners. That's white oak. That's an old log structure. They burned it down. The developers bought the property and didn't want it as a hazard, so they burned it down. And that's the way that goes. Yeah. I knew the owners there, and they had no idea it was a log house until they were boring and drilling holes through it for utilities, and they kept bringing up wood chips. No matter where wood chips keep coming out. What the heck? Now, many of the immigrants brought their tools with them. This is a goosewing axe. It's a hewing axe. It's used for shaping logs, not felling trees. And that's a broad axe that was probably made here. Log structures could be made by relatively unskilled labor with simple tools: a felling axe, a hewing axe, and a crosscut saw, also called a broad axe. That would have been made here probably. And this is how they did it. To square a log, if they would cut these notches in the log like this, and then you would take your hewing axe and you'd split out the wood between the notches, and then you'd be left with a roughly fairly straight, fairly even side. It did a lot of work like that. My friend worked at St. Mary's Village in Maryland on using just the type of technique, and he has the scars and railroad tracks up along his shin bone to prove it.
Yeah.
Got the scars to prove it. And there's another graphic of how it was done. You snap a line, hew to the line, and there you go. A lot of work. Everything was a lot of work. Sometimes they would just flatten the sides, that the inside and the outside, and they leave the tops and the bottom rounded. They did that later. It's kind of a shortcut. That broad axe that I just showed you, that was mended. That was broken off and it was re-welded. Sometime if I were younger and had more ambition, I think I would do a program on mended tools. Many of the old tools that you have, you'll find that they were mended and fixed. We have a pie peel that was broken, and very carefully someone overlapped the two broken pieces and drilled little holes and put wrought nails through it and folded it. With a beautiful job. But yeah, if something broke, you didn't throw it away. You fixed it. As you know, that's a felling axe. That is not a fault that handle is bent. Many times the hewing axes that you would use to flatten and straighten the logs, those purposely had a kind of a bent handle because it was easier to do the job that you were doing with it rather than with a straight handle. If you wanted the logs a little smoother, and many people did, you'd use this adze, A-D-Z, adze, which were good and sharp. You could really smooth the log down nicely. Not as good as a plane, but what difference did it make? Because these logs will never be seen anyway. And for drilling the mortise, it was pegged, or mortise and peg, these hand drills were used to drill the holes for mortises. Here's the Yeagle house. Someone was just here that had with the picture of this when it had the porch on the front. I've heard it said that this house may have been built in 3 different sections. Like the bottom layer of logs, these here, originally, this may have been the attic floor, and the roof line might have been here, because this is this style of log. Above it, they have flattened hewn logs. And then above that, there's a different style of logs. So it might have been built in 3 sections, built, enlarged, enlarged again. And oftentimes what you have up here, this is a second story, but you have a knee wall on these older houses. When the rafters come down, there's a good bit of area in here that's pretty inaccessible up in the attic. You can't really get there unless you crawl around in your hands and knees to get to it. So what they would do is they would build the outside wall here where the rafters rested on. They'd build that up maybe 3 feet or 4 feet. It's called a knee wall. And then the rafters would rest on that build-up wall, and you had more space. Here you didn't have the rafters coming down and so cramped. So that was a common construction thing. You'd find that commonly, that knee wall coming up to raise the rafters. But that's a Yeagle house. That too is a Fagley photo. So there's a person here that has the picture of this house when it had a porch across the front here and on the side, and also pent roofs. And it's a very interesting picture. I understand it was disassembled and taken somewhere. It's not there anymore, but it's somewhere. The parts of it are somewhere. I don't know. Nurr Log House, Delphi, Lower Frederick Township, about 1750. Emma Nurr lived here in the mid-19th century style, lived and ate in the Stube and slept in the Kammer. And it's still there. It's not in real good shape, but the house is still there. So up into the 20th century, you had someone living in a house like that. Bartlett Herbing cabin, Oley, photograph 1958, dark kitchen. There are no windows. If you wanted light in here, you open the kitchen door. Often they're double door, Dutch doors, double doors. You'd open the top half of the door. The fireplace often burned better if the double door was open anyway, because those huge chimneys, they tended to smoke unless you got a lot of air coming in from somewhere. So, yeah, there's a bell up there. That's odd. There's like a dinner bell. The dinner bell is up there underneath that little structure. They'd always ring the dinner bell, to bring the people in for dinner or for lunch. And my dad had a horse. When they heard the dinner bell, the horse would immediately turn and start heading in. Originally, back in colonial days, they didn't have bells. It was an expensive thing. They used like a long trumpet, a long straight trumpet to call the men in and so forth. I don't know what it sounded like, but that was what apparently they used. There's another picture of the dark kitchen from another angle. You opened the door to get light into the kitchen. Those are my great-grandparents, one set of great-grandparents. It's Jacob Imbody and Mary Beeler. It's in the Deep Creek area. Picture's 1906. The daughter was Sally Imbody, who married Ellsworth Wood, who had the son Max Wood, who married Annie Renninger, and they had sons Maxwell, John, and Robert. And here we are. I looked for that house around back there. I can't find it anywhere. So I don't know. That's a great picture. Notice how worn down the threshold step is, worn down from wear over the years. You have everything neat here. You have the basin to wash your hands, the chair to set it on, and the water to put into the basin. I put this picture in. I didn't cite where it was from, but what I wanted to show was this is corner bracery, corner braces. These are called end posts. Medial posts are posts in the middle. End posts are posts at the end at a corner. And once again, you see the two usually have three, but here's two long logs stretching from one end to the other. Well, actually, these probably stop here at the medial post. And there's corner braces here. Corner braces here. That's not common. The braces are let into the log. Of course, it's to give the whole thing a lateral stability. But so anyway, sometimes they use corner braces. This is probably built in two different sections, or not. End posts and medial posts. End posts are at a corner. There would be a channel cut in there, like a mortise, from top to bottom, pretty deep. And the ends of the logs would make like a tenon that would fit into there. These logs were actually recycled from another house. This one, in the original, these tenons were pegged. So anyway, these logs fit into the medial post or an end post. Originally, I don't know which it was. It doesn't matter. But the point I wanted to make was these were like mortise, like a tenon that was inserted into a mortise, a long channel, and then logs were just put there one above the other. And there's another one, the log that would fit into a corner post. Those channels were hacked out roughly. They're pretty deep. That one has the log at about 8 or 9 inches. And there's the channel. The channel that's this here that the tenon of the log fit into. There's also a marking. They laid them out on the ground and marked them, which we're all familiar with. There's a name for that marking. It escapes me at the moment, but there's a word or a name for the marking like that in that manner. What's that?
Oh, sorry.
No,
That's
a question. Yeah.
In my card, number 2.
Yeah. Commonly, you'll find timbers who have been numbered, and there's a name for that whole system, but it escapes me at the moment. That's more of that same house there on Coalflesh Road. That channel, the mortise, that's down about 5 inches into the medial post, so it goes in pretty deep. Here's a plank house. This is an interesting house. This is a medial post. This is taken down by Mike Hart. The owner wanted it down. And these are, if they're out of place, I have many more slides of this house later on in this slideshow. But these apparently are recycled thresh floor planks from a barn. And the house was dated around 1815. And this doesn't work because who would recycle a barn thresh floor in 1815? They were just building them then. So I don't know, but those planks are about 3 or 4 inches wide. They're heavy planks. You can even see the ghosts of the originally where they rested on something. And so these planks were all mortised and tenoned. They all have tenons cut in them. Took a lot of work. We'll get to more of those pictures of those when we get to it. This is some of the trim that was on that house that was just taken down. That trim. Those are not appliques of trim, but those are actually cut with a plane or planes cut into a piece of wood that was used then as a trim. Okay, Union Pay Schoolhouse, Mock Road, New Hanover Township. They were not necessarily fancy. I don't know what this might have been originally. Most of the chinking is knocked out of it, but many times these things were very, you might say, utilitarian. Certainly something like a pay school, like a schoolhouse, pay school. Pay schools were around before the public schools came along, and usually a group of neighbors would deed a little patch of ground, a few perches of ground, get together, put up a little schoolhouse, and hire an itinerant school teacher a few months out of the year. Back in the Montgomery County Park area, if you know where I mean, near Deep Creek, there were a number of log houses which the county demolished when they were making Montgomery County Park. And so I have slides of a number of those. This is interesting. This is where they rot out. The windowsill, water collects in the windowsill, runs down somewhere, and rots out underneath it. Very common. Now, this is an interesting house, Jacob Reifsnyder House, corner of Reifsnyder and Swamp Picnic Roads. These logs are huge. They're white oak and they are massive. They're so large that actually this log here is shaking. Here's one log. I think, maybe I'm wrong on that, but they are huge. They use logs as chinking. Hard to date this. So it's really unique. It's rough. The house itself had a corner fireplace. It was small, very small. I don't have the exact dimensions, but small. And it had a corner fireplace, which is also an indication that it's old. Older houses tend to be smaller, and corner fireplaces tended to be older. Now, there's not one way, but generally, it was a small, old house with a corner fireplace and huge white oak logs. I put that's a full-size pencil there for scale. And so you can see how large that log is. And apparently, this here's a structural log, and this here's a structural log. And these in here are chinking. They're massive white oak logs. It says to me that it's pretty old. I don't know. More of the same. It's interesting. They took down a log house there. The outside wall and the inside wall of the log house were smoothed. The top and bottom part were rounded. When they built the stone house, they used those pieces of those logs as headers above the windows and doors. This is the Albrecht house in Sassmansville. I understand he was a weaver. This was taken down by new owners. Actually, they had a quarry that's fighting to get in there. And I understand the logs were shipped to Georgia, where it was reconstructed by someone. And once again, you can see that there tended to be three large logs going from one side of the house to the other, tying it all together lateral, because these logs down here are broken and these up here are broken. So to give it lateral stability, those were tied together that way. And as usual, you find notch and saddle joinery. Not too fancy. Pretty utilitarian, you might say. More of the same structure. More of the same structure. The theory that I've heard is that to date these, the older the house is, the more sharp the point is. And as time goes on, the point just comes shallower and shallower and shallower and shallower. So that's a pretty shallow point there. So that would indicate construction up into the early part of the 19th century. They were building these houses practically all the way through the 19th century, up into the early part of the 19th century, because that is not a sharp peak. More of the same. Plastered, of course, inside. More of the same. That's not part of it. That's not part of it. That one we did already. The plank house there, that took a lot of work. And I don't know where they recycled those planks from, but they were about 3 or 4 inches. They looked for all the world like thresh floor of a barn. We'll get to more of those later. There's mortised medial posts to extend the length, Penn Township, Huntington County. Yeah, probably one of these was the original. Probably the one with the central chimney was the original. And then they decided to make it bigger. And you have a medial post, an end post here. Once again, invariably, you'll find or four. 1, 2, 3, 4 logs going one side to the other, tie the whole thing together, and aren't broken by windows and doors and things. Sometimes you'd have half and half. Half stone, half log. That's odd. Usually smokehouses are small and made of wood or brick. I mean, of stone or brick. And to have a wooden smokehouse, I mean, they existed, but it wasn't common. And no end of log barns. You'll find log barns still existing, but they're still being used. They often, you would not want them tight. You have hay up there, in this case, bales of straw, that's still being used, but you have hay up there, which you want to dry. So you wanted them loose with plenty of air circulation. There's the barn interior, York County. There's an interesting chinking here. Putting these stones in like that, chinking. Barn, obviously still being used because there's bales, straw bales in there. Every barn is kind of different. Well, anyway, every one is kind of different. This is the Hans Noos Log House, Colonial Road, Frederick Township. First section was built prior to 1730, it is thought. A beautiful little place. It's fallen in hard times now. It's in, if you know that area, it's on Colonial Road near the Frederick living facility. And there's a fence around it, but it's going down. At the beginning of the program, I mentioned that there was a tradition, not a tradition, but there were examples of log houses that were built in the Czech or Eastern European style, and not in the Germanic style. This is one. We have here these tapered, tapered dovetails. That's not common. That took a lot of work. This dovetail here is tapered, and the piece below it and fits in. It's that's uncommon. That house is going down and may soon be lost if it's not lost already. But that's a very interesting house. Well, more the same. That's the front, and more of the same. You can see that was cut in with a saw. This was sawed. An interesting thing in the back. Here's it's a medial post. I think it may have been an end post originally or not, but there's a medial post that was pegged. There's a peg here. So somewhere along the line, somebody drilled through that post and pegged this is broken away, and then pegged this opposing dovetail log in. This log here, of course, would have run away from us, straight away from us. Another picture. There's the peg, and it went into the dovetail. This is not common. Broken up, at least at the bottom. So that Hans Noos house, that's really one of a kind. It's not common to the kind of log structure that we have around here, but it was definitely built and in the early and middle 18th century. Another picture more the same. Now, getting back to that half-timbered plank infill house, and a small pike. Mike Hart took it down. Owner wanted it down. This may have been built in two different sections. The part over here on the right with the planks may have been first, or I don't know. It seems to have been built in two different sections. This brick part here on the left was the kitchen. And these were all fitted out. Here we can see somewhere along the line. I don't know if these were pegged here into here, or if those were pegs from the original construction. Probably they were pegs from the original construction. That took a lot of work. That's what the gable end where the kitchen is there behind the bricks. Note how these are all fitted here. This is a cross, one of the long cross logs that goes from one side to the other. They had vertical planks here fitted in. And down here, fitted into that line. More of the same house. Same house. Same house. I think they have come to the end of the line. It would appear that way. We are back at the beginning. That's my story then, and I'm sticking to it. Now I realize it's just a light overview of log structures. It's not in-depth, it's not detailed, and there's no particular expertise behind it, just my observation from over the years of dealing with this kind of thing. We have time. Questions, comments, observations? So,
When would you expect the log construction to have ended mostly?
well, it could have been running all the way up into the earliest 20th century, but generally speaking, around mid-19th century. Later, they're still building log in the later 19th century. And answer your question, there's no clear cutoff date. I wouldn't know what to say. There's no clear cutoff date, but they tapered down in the 19th century.
Questions?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You said half a new date. When did they stop making log construction, log buildings? And my observation is generally it tapered down in the 19th century. It's less and less and less. There's no clear cutoff date for most of those things. This one.
The original ones, what would they use to shape it?
Chinking,
Yeah.
stones, and clay. And on the outside, they would often put lime putty. Lime was made with slaked lime, that is active slaked lime, if you know what I mean. Cement, Portland cement didn't come along until the late 19th and early 20th century. So they would use slaked lime putty, and often the chinking would be plastered with that. The problem is that got quite hard, but it wasn't as hard as cement. And over time, it kind of eroded away. But stones, we used whatever, as that one slide that I had there. They were using whole logs as chinking. But generally stones, clay, and then lime putty on top. Yes.
Some of the houses look like they lime puttied over top of all the lots.
Yes.
Was that fairly common or not, and did they just, how did they patch that? I know stucco, you have to do, wire ribbing.
They often left those logs exposed to the weather. You would think they'd weather more, but they weathered less, I think, when they were exposed to the weather and dried out. But yes, they'd plaster the whole thing. It looked nicer, it looked better. So in answer to your question, I don't know.
What
the house a few years ago at Congo on Kutztown Road, I'm not sure if that's on a road, it was either log or plank, it was either taken down or knocked down. I wonder if we knew what happened to it.
Let me think. Congo Road and Kutztown Road. Yeah, I know the area. I don't know. Yes.
Martin's extension,
Yes.
they might be called marriage marks.
What were they called?
Marriage marks.
Marriage marks. Okay.
Marriage.
Marriage marks. Obviously, that makes sense to marry the logs together.
Yeah.
Marriage marks. Yeah, thank you.
Why? How comparison to law.
I don't know. Why are there so few half-timbered houses as opposed to log houses? Since in many areas in Germany where these immigrants came from, they're almost all half-timbered houses. I don't know. It wasn't the style. It probably took a good bit of work to timber to do the timbering. You had to cut it. You had to cut all those mortises and tenons, and to get that up, it was probably easier to just erect a log house. And the log house would, I don't know about contracting and swelling. My guess is they stopped doing the half-timbered houses because they were harder to make, harder to do. Yeah, sir.
You showed a slide of a Zook's, ball barn,
Yes.
and I'm a Zook, is that Zook barn still standing, or where is it?
To be honest, I got that slide from what I call SOTI, something off the internet. So it answers the question whether the Zook barn that I have on there is still standing. I really don't know. I put it in for whatever reason to illustrate something that I put it in. A lot of barns are not rare, but so I don't know. Yes.
I was wondering when you talked to the people that had a controversy over dating, if you recommended that they get a dendrochronologist to come in and bore through and take.
Sure,
samples and
of course, that would tell you when the tree was cut down. On like official sites and restorations and such, you dendrochronology, you take a plug of the wood and the rings of the tree are as telling as a fingerprint. And they can tell you exactly when that tree was cut down. But there's an expense to that. And the folks that I was dealing with and talking to, they were just curious. They had an old house and they were curious. If they wanted to, they could do that, but it would be whatever the charge would be. A not inconsequential charge to do that would be my thought. Yes, Greg.
But you showed a slide with the Whitey house.
Yes.
Is that the Whitey house that was that Whitey School Road?
No, that was also, it's a long lane off the Swamp Pike. That was Reverend Leidick's son. Reverend Philip Leidick was the first ordained minister, Reformed minister to come to this area. And Peter was his son. And also people of consequence. So, in answer to your question, I don't know, but it was off the Swamp Pike.
But it came down
Yeah, they burned it.
and it was about 1750.
We guess 1750 by looking at the stairs and the trim and so on inside.
The traffic law.
Yeah. The problem with all these old houses is, the barns and everything, it's a tragic loss, but you need to be wealthy to keep a barn up and put a roof on a barn. You need to be wealthy to restore and keep up barns. Thank goodness some people do it. So they do it very nicely, but the common person who's, scraping along, paycheck to paycheck, there's no money there to keep the barn up or other things. So it takes a lot of money. Well, all it takes is money. Yes.
How did they handle the foundation, and did they have trouble with termites?
relative to termites, I don't know. That, many places do. You wouldn't build the logs right down to the ground. You would have some kind of a stone, usually a stone, maybe 2-3 feet or more high, that went down, that dug out and made a footing, like a footing stone up several feet above ground level. And then the first log would rest on that. Are we done? Yes.
Just like to make the sales pitch. We remember the old West Mountain Church down in Roxville,
Yes.
and we have a 1732 log line house.
Yes. I'm very familiar with it.
We just recently pretty much restored it all. And a lot of things you pointed out, the question about the foundations and all, it exhibits all those things. It has the center chimney, you know, and everything.
Yes.
So I think I was welcome down.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yes, it's quite nice. I haven't been there for years and years.
So we just got done that, we're finishing it. And pretty much done.
Did you do anything with that spring house that's down behind it?
Well, actually, myself and another gentleman rebuilt that maybe 15-20 years ago.
Yes. What was his name?
Louis.
Don't worry, I don't want to put you.
Royals, but
That's right, Olschlag, yeah.
yeah, no, I would.
Did you? Mhm, yeah. I have many pictures of that. I have a program on spring houses and I have many pictures of that. It has some unique features. There's an outside well there to collect the
Yeah,
water.
right in
And
front of it.
then it flows over into the spring house from that well.
Yeah.
Sir,
There's a log barn out in Belleville area. Close to Locust Road, the church, and it's still being used on a regular basis. Have you ever seen that one? Or
No.
anything about it?
no. I know a good bit about a little postage stamp area size right around where we are here. Yeah. No, I don't know any of that.
There's a good example of a half log barn on Allentown Road between Pilesford and the Twin Churches.
Yes,
It's been preserved, the lower half is stone, but the upper half is all rock.
yes,
And they preserved that.
yes. Good. Well, that's my story then, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you all for coming again.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
That was fun.